Hey, this is Dr. Emily Roberts of Personal Finance for PhDs. Thanks for joining me for this quick explainer video of how to use my new spending tracker, which I made in Excel. There are a couple elements here that you're going to be familiar with, and there are a few that maybe are a little bit less common for a spending tracker, but they are principles that I like to teach to graduate students and postdocs and ones that I use myself. This spreadsheet is only designed to help you track your spending, but of course, if you want to add budgeting functionality on top of this, you are absolutely welcome to take it and make it your own and add whatever charts, etc. you like. Hopefully it's set up for you to do that pretty easily to whatever style you want. If you've not yet downloaded the spending tracker, you can find it at pfforphds.com/tracker. Let's dive into how to use the tracker. The first section is actually tracking your income. And instead of starting with November's income up top here for our November spending, we are actually starting with October's income. So let's flip over to the October tab. And down at the bottom is where you track your income throughout the month of October. Now, the principle here is that you receive income in a given month, and then you spend that income in the subsequent month. So your income from one month funds your budget for the next month. Okay, so for example, in October, let's say that we had a few different paychecks. We had on the 15th, a regular paycheck, like this is from your grad student or your postdoc position. Let's say it's in the amount of $3,500. So that's like your regular salary. But maybe also in the course of October, you had a few other things coming in. So maybe you got paid from your side hustle, and that is a variable amount of income depending on how much you work. But let's say in this month it was $400. And maybe you also had some interest income. I don't know how much you're getting in interest these days, but it certainly should be more than nothing. So maybe it's like $10 of interest. Maybe you had, what about some credit card cash back, like some credit card rewards, maybe also on the 25th. Maybe that's another like $25. So in this example, in the course of October, you had $3,935 worth of income. And that number gets pulled over to the top of our November spending tracker. So there's that number from October. Now, the next thing that I would do if I'm teaching you how to budget and track is to pay yourself first. And so from October's income, the first thing we do at the beginning of November is allocate some money towards our various goals. Let's say this person has a few different goals. On the first, they are making like a Roth IRA contribution. Let's say that's like $500. So they're investing for their retirement. Maybe they have a few different savings goals. Maybe they're building up their emergency fund. I'm putting an Ally Bank here because that's where I bank. They have their emergency fund. Maybe they're putting $250 per month there. So these allocations come before any spending happens. And you can see that from this $3,935 of gross income, we've done these allocations. And now in our general spending fund available, we're down to $3,185. Now, before we get into the regular spending, I want to teach you this principle of targeted savings that I like to use. The idea is that you save up in advance for large, irregular expenses. Here's how you would like functionally do it. You would be setting up savings to other types of accounts other than like your emergency fund. Now, something that's really common for grad students and postdocs is to have to save up for their future tax bills if they're not having income tax withheld from their paychecks. Let's say you have a tax targeted savings, and maybe you're putting like $250 per month into that. So that's one of those up first allocations. And maybe you have another one that is for travel, and that's also $250 per month. So these allocations happen first thing before you do your other spending throughout the month. The idea, again, is that you put money aside in advance before these kinds of expenses come up. We have actually a different tab for it under here, targeted spending accounts. The first one we made was for taxes, and there's another for travel. And on the 1st of November, we were doing a regular savings amount of $250 for each of those. Let's say, because we're starting this off, let's say we already had some balance in this account. Maybe for taxes, we already had like $400 in the account at the start of this period. And for travel, maybe we already had. Okay, so we're saving up into these targeted savings buckets. Now back in our regular spending for November, let's move down into the next section, the spending from the general fund. This is where you would do what you would normally think of as expense tracking throughout the month. Just keep track of all the transactions that you make, all the spending that you do. So for example, maybe on the first of the month, you're paying your rent. And then you have some variable spending. Maybe you go to the grocery store and spend $100. I personally like to get gas at Costco, so we're going to have an example of that. Maybe $50. And again, just throughout the whole month, you're keeping track of all of your transactions in this section. This is from your general fund for spending. It looks like we have $2,685 to start with to spend generally. And this keeps a running total of how much is left, $1,535 after those 3 transactions that I just put in. Let's say in the course of this month, you had some spending that you wanted to do from one of those targeted savings accounts. That doesn't come out of your general fund spending section here. It comes down from this section, spending from targeted savings. So let's say later in the month, you bought a flight. You're going home for the holidays. And it costs you $500, and you're going to pull it from your travel targeted savings account. So we've been recording the amount of money that goes into these accounts, but we also need to record the amount of money that comes out. So again, on the 20th, you bought a flight for $500. We have to put in a negative number here because it's an expenditure. And so you can see the balance of this account is down to $250. I really love the strategy of targeted savings. This is something I relied on heavily when I was in graduate school because sometimes it is really difficult to cash flow those large irregular expenses on a grad student stipend or a postdoc salary. Like it was not nothing for me to spend $500 on a flight, and I really did have to spread that cost over a few months. The advantage of targeted savings is that you do that by saving up in advance rather than like throwing it on a credit card and having to pay that off over the next several months or a year and paying interest on it. So it's still a way of helping you budget and track and plan for your expenses. The principle is just to do it in advance instead of after the fact. So going back to our November tracker, we would just continue to fill this out as the month progresses with all the spending that you do from your general account, all the spending that you do from targeted savings, and of course also keeping track of your income as well that will go towards funding your December budget. So you can see it's a pretty simple tracker, but it incorporates these, what I think are really, really important budgeting principles. Now, if you're not quite budgeting this way, you might be doing what I call living behind, not living on time. That could be because you're spending money as soon as it comes in, or because you're using credit cards as like a short-term loan. The ideal way to use credit cards is to use them as if they were debit cards. So you only put a charge on a credit card if you could immediately pay it off from the balance currently in your checking account. So use a credit card as if you would a debit card, but if you haven't been doing that, or if you've been spending money as soon as it comes in, you may need to take some time to save up a bit of money so you have enough in your checking account to cover everything at the time that it needs to be covered. So you might do this through some short-term frugality, some fasts as I call them. Maybe you will fast from eating out or fast from using your car in favor of biking, something like that, whatever would work for you. It's not going to be a forever thing. It's just going to be over the short term while you build up some savings so you can get back to living on time. Well, I hope you enjoyed this preview of the spending tracker and learning a little bit about the budgeting principles that I like to teach. Best of luck with your spending tracking and your budgeting. And if you want to grab the tracker, again, you can find it at pfforphds.com/tracker. Good luck.